Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March 1st, 2023 committee meeting. We are going to switch things up around a bit and start with our general committee. So, Council, we're going to go with item number 20, which is resolution exonerating 22 municipal taxes for Keystone Kid Space. Bear with us, we have to run around to find where this is at in our packet. Okay. Thank you. All right, sorry, we have a long agenda this evening. All right, I'm going to head to General Committee. So we have this item for Keystone Kid Space, exonerating 2022 taxes. We have representation from Keystone Kid Space. So would you like to come on up?
If I may, can I please approach for just a moment?
Yes.
Thanks. These are some material from Keystone Kid Space, and you very well may have, and I think you do because I'm looking at it right now in your folder, my letter, but I made copies for.
Okay.
So number one, I want to thank you very much so in terms as to moving us up to the top of the agenda. I greatly appreciate that. I'm sure my wife appreciates it as well. And having said
I'm
that,
sorry, can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Niles Ben. I'm the attorney for Keystone Kid Space, and I promised Attorney Hoyt that I would be very, very, very brief. I had submitted a letter to Joe Jeffcoat as the treasurer for the city on December the 20th relative to the tax bill that's attached at the back of my letter and asked for forgiveness with regard to that tax. Just by way of an abbreviated history, Keystone Kid Space is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and we were created a number of years ago, but we went through a very long process in terms as to trying to put our act together before we actually, in fact, did anything. So between creating a board and trying to find the perfect location, which we wanted to be in the city of York, we ultimately came up with what formerly was the Armory and chose to have that as our building when the Commonwealth decided that they no longer were going to have the Armory there. The Commonwealth, because of them taking title to the property or owning the property, were not in a position to convey the property to anything other than an agency, a public agency. And so with the Commonwealth's permission, RACI took title to the property. We paid for the property to the Commonwealth, and RACI held title to the property for the period of time that the building was under construction and renovation. We've invested several $1 million in terms as to fixing the building such that it would accommodate the needs of Keystone Kid Space. Unfortunately, the building completed its construction during the pandemic, and we were unable to have access to the building for the purposes that we intended, and that was to have children come in a hands-on facility where they would be touching all kinds of materials, things, equipment, and whatnot. It just wasn't safe. And so as a result, we let title remain with RACI until we raised enough money for purposes of collateralizing loans for the construction. And in the interim period, we entered into a lease with an option to purchase with RACI because we had to do that from a legal perspective, just to ensure that title would ultimately come back to us. When we went through that process, as I understood the law, and I'm not suggesting to you that I'm right because sometimes I happen to be wrong, and my wife shares that with me quite a lot. The reality of it is that I saw in the law that if we had an equitable interest in real estate, we could apply for a tax assessment appeal. And so in the capacity of being the lessee of the property as well as the equitable owner of the property per the lease to option to buy, I had applied for a tax assessment appeal such that the property would be exonerated from taxes. At no time did the City of York ever collect taxes on that property prior to our occupancy. First it was the Commonwealth through the Armory, then it was Racy, and now us. And so having said that, we did in fact go through an assessment appeal hearing. 3 members of the board were present, that's the entire board. And I was advised verbally that the decision was rendered in our favor. However, we never got the official decision because when we applied, we were not actually occupying the property. We were a lessee, but we had not occupied the property because of the pandemic. And so as a result, that decision lay in abeyance, and I was told that once we take title, we can then file for another appeal, which I had done, and we were supposed to have a hearing, I believe, September 2022. Unfortunately, I got sick. I had to request a continuance, and the earliest time that they could hear our appeal was the end of this month, 2023. So we have an appeal pending. I'm being overly optimistic. I believe that the decision that will be rendered would be a very similar decision to what was basically rendered in 2021, and therefore I think moving forward we will have a tax-exempt property. But unfortunately, we received the attached bill to my letter, and when I notified Mr. Jeffcoat of that, I suggested that we were going to pay the bill, which we have. I was hopeful that he could hold the money in abeyance pending your decision. And so as a result, what I am requesting is that we be forgiven as it relates to that particular bill and with respect to any forthcoming bill if in fact we receive an approved decision by the assessment board that we would no longer be obligated to pay any taxes anyway. With me, I have Jessica Brubaker, who is not only our executive director, but also the co-founder of Keystone Kids Space and who has worked overly diligently for what I construe the good of not only York City, but York County children. My letter indicates that as of the date of that letter, December 2022, we had seen something like 3,500 students walk through our building, and pretty much every school district in York County. We have a very close affinity to the Academy, the York City School District, the YWCA, but frankly, I can talk the law, Jessica can talk the use. So if I can just have Jessica come up here, so if you have any questions, maybe the two of us can answer them.
Yep. Thank you.
Hi. So just for the record, my name is Jessica Brubaker, Executive Director and co-founder of Keystone Kids Space.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council?
I do. How is the county forgiving taxes? How do they play into this?
So we had requested of all 3 taxing authorities the same thing. I wrote a similar letter to the school district and a very similar letter to the county. The county has responded by saying that they're going to hold their decision until after the tax assessment hearing at the end of this month. So they didn't approve, nor did they reject. The school district has said to me in a letter from their administrator, so it hasn't gone before the board, but only to the administrator, that it is typically not their policy to honor tax forgiveness. My intention is to write a letter to the school board as opposed to the treasurer and ask them to reconsider that because they have a right to award forgiveness. But I think that they would wait probably until after the decision of the tax assessment office. And frankly, if that's what you choose to do, I'm fine with that. I just would like to get rid of that tax liability because we have limited income. And so as a result of that, the expense of not just your tax, but the county's tax and the school district tax is enough to shut us down, in theory. And so as a result of that, I feel confident we're going to be successful. I don't care if you want to hold your decision until after that decision. But if, in fact, we're successful, I would like to have this tax forgiven.
Does our the assessment, or it has nothing to do with that?
If I'm totally honest with you, I'm not so terribly certain that it has any significance with regard to what the county has already said or the school district. I can say this, however. I think that if you were to say no and not waiting at all, or not rendering a decision at all, then I'm inclined to believe the school district will equally say no. I think if you say yes and the county says yes, I think it puts the school district in a different position.
Talking about the assessment,
The assessment board.
you have to go in front of
The Board of Assessment Appeals. And we haven't gotten notice of the official hearing, but I called last week and I was told it would be either March 28th or March 29th.
what if they deny your?
They won't. I'm being very cocky, but I know what we went through before. I had spoken to the chairman. He advised me what their decision was. None of the facts have changed. There is absolutely no basis for it not to be approved. It is clearly a not-for-profit, tax-exempt organization.
So even if council approves in your favor, and school board and the county and the assessment board says no, let's say, then everything is.
Well, I think if you approved it not tonight, but at your next regular board meeting, you would be forgiving the tax bill that you have in front of you. I think if the Board of Assessment Appeals denied my request, then we would be obligated to pay the 2023, 2024.
Any other questions or comments from council? I would be comfortable with following after the assessment appeals makes their decision. We recently had two other nonprofits at the end of last year, I believe, and in January that came before us. And we tend to follow suit with the county. I would feel more comfortable with waiting until the actual decision. It has nothing to do with the actual nonprofit and the work. It's just kind of the order. And so once they approve it or make a decision, then I would be comfortable with having this come back before council. What happens is if items are requested to appear on the agenda from administration or the treasurer's office, we don't deny that request. So it was requested to appear on our agenda for committee for discussion. I would just personally feel more comfortable after the assessment office has made their decision.
Well, my question is, do you know when your April board meeting would be? April council meeting would be?
It's always, our legislative meetings are the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month. And we also have our committee meetings, which is the fourth Wednesday of the month.
What I'm asking is, typically the Board of Assessment Appeals renders a decision within a week, and I'm thinking it would be the first week in April. Where would we go next in terms of to this body?
Well, this would stay in committee, so it would appear on our March 29th committee meeting. I believe that's the date.
But we're not going to have a decision then. They only do it in writing.
Well, we can always, won't have a decision then. If the decision occurs, council can always wait for it to appear on a legislative agenda. Since we're already having the discussion, it's a public discussion, and it would be up to the majority of council if we wanted to waive the committee. But we could always waive the committee, and it could appear on an April legislative agenda.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you.
And those
Any-
dates are the 4th and the 18th, our legislative meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And
Thank you.
for the courtesy of moving us up.
Yes, no problem. I'm going to move for this item to stay in committee. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to a resolution for a letter of intent to support Phase 2 of the Public Safety Network. This item was submitted by the Solicitor's Office for Logos Works. So is there anyone that would like to talk about the letter of support? I don't see anyone from Logos Works. Solicitor's Office.
I spoke to, I spoke to Jason about it, and I reviewed it. I mean, it's a resolution of support without any, hard and fast legal things, and I think it advances the ball without any requirements.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
I have a question. Is this something that's needed for them to move the project forward, or can they move the project forward without us moving forward this agreement?
I can weigh in.
Would you?
So yes, from my understanding, for the meeting that we participated in with Aaron Anderson and Otto and his folks, they are at a point where they have secured commitments from individuals to help pay for furthering the study and getting us, the city council, leadership, the community, the answers that we want about the project. But the expenses are going to start to add up quickly, and those the funders that they had the commitment from just want to know that we are interested. Just want to know that as a body, that everybody are interested parties, that they are committed to. I mean, that we're interested in at least taking the next steps and working towards the goal of a community camera project before they continue to throw their philanthropic and their business monies into it. Otherwise, from what we've been told, Aaron and Logos Works are starting to pick up the tab. Like, they're actually incurring expenses and costs to try to move the project forward themselves. So with those backers, so that it doesn't come back and hit the taxpayers, this is just allowing that body of people to know that we're interested, that we are interested in the project being furthered, so that Aaron doesn't have to continue to pick up the tab. And they understand that at any time, council may end up just saying no, like we're not interested in letting you use the infrastructure, the poles, so on and so forth, and the project could just fall on its ear. So that's kind of where it's at right now. They just want to know that we have a little skin in the game, that we are interested as the other party that's involved in all of this. So hope that answers the question a little bit.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? I'll just say a comment. We've talked about the subject for a public safety camera system for quite some time. But as I've said in previous meetings, probably was in August where council really started to get involved, to go down to Delaware, meet with the police chief there, view their camera system, as well as having various meetings. And so it took a while for me to get more of an understanding of what was actually needed from council. At one point it wasn't clear for me. And then we got to the point for infrastructure, but Lancaster City was used as the prime example for a third party. And so really digging into understand that when they implemented their camera system 15, 16 years ago, completely different process. Council wasn't directly involved with that. And so me trying to really figure out what would be the process and what is legal, a lot of the questions that I had going back to a year and a half, 2 years ago, really can't be answered off the initial work that has been completed. So there needs to be another phase so that when this decision comes to council, pretty much no stone is left unturned. And thank you to all of those who have come to the table to discuss this, to work on this. We've gotten to this point with a letter of intent. And so this will show support if council decides to move forward with the actual intent of getting those questions answered, from sustainability to the legal aspect to the third party, any and everything that would be connected to that. When it comes to the resolution for this support for a letter of intent, I am 99% fine with this. The only thing I would like to add, because I want to make sure that we don't get into this same predicament a year or two from now, meaning that council needs to make sure that there is consistent collaboration from council's end. So whereas, this would be the last whereas, I would look at adding, whereas prior to final approval for use of city infrastructure, City Council has requested that the third parties collaborate directly with City Council to develop. And that's it. And then you just continue on with what's in there. That's the only change I would like to see in this letter of support. And that just puts it on the record that council needs to make sure that we are collaborating and we're on the same page throughout. As it's been mentioned, this possibly could take up to well over a year to 2 years. So council needs to make sure that they're involved in this consistently with the work that we've started from last quarter on.
Could you say that, could you just repeat?
Yes. Whereas prior to final approval for use of city infrastructure. Okay. Everybody else got it?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any feedback from council in regards to that.
My only question or concern with that, would that, to me, I mean, I could be wrong, it makes it appear as if we're in agreement with moving forward with everything with that language.
You mean the remaining language or?
The language that you just mentioned, the prior to use, so the way to ensure collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Which whereas were you adding that to?
The last one before A, B, C, D.
Okay.
Would communication be a better word than collaboration? Just say that we're kept updated? I can see where you're coming
Yeah.
from, Aquina. I know that's not the intent.
Right.
But, yeah.
Legally, is there communication versus collaboration?
Communication and collaboration. Collaboration means the two parties have to talk to each other. Communication could simply be one-sided, so if you want better control, collaboration is a better word.
Okay.
And that's okay, even though it's not our project?
Yeah, we still have.
Okay, okay, that would be my question. Okay,
Too far.
Okay.
okay.
I really like what has the work and the communication and the collaboration that has happened since August. And this is going to be when this decision does come before council, it's a monumental decision. So the collaboration really needs to be there. Thank you for the legal.
Legal mumbo jumbo.
Any other questions or comments from council? Any questions or comments from the public? Going up.
Manuel Gomez, City of York. Good to see everybody. I do like the observation that Madam President has made tonight. I'm in full agreement myself. From my perspective, I think that this is a logical next step, and I understand entirely the basis for this letter of intent. Whether it's collaboration or a final report, I think that it is key that you stay in step with what's going on without, as the solicitor stated, tiptoeing a little bit too far into the actual mechanics of what's happening here. We don't want to end up disjointed, especially where we've seen some of this happen along the way with some of the other initiatives that are at hand. I think that that's a good call. I don't see any issues with it necessarily. It just seems like a logical next step. Nobody will want to sink funds into such a large project without having at least some buy-in in terms of the feasibility study even happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Ryan Brickeroff. I live on Hartley Street. First, I just want to say thank you so much for, it's clear that some of the comments and the input from, the people who have been involved in this issue have been included and thought about in this. I would just ask for one additional thing in there. If we could explicitly state that these requests will be made public at the end so that everyone can see them. I know we had another attempt at a feasibility study earlier. It was very difficult for anyone who was not directly involved to get a hold of that and to see it. I actually had to reach out through a personal contact in order to get it, and other people I knew were trying to get it and could not actually. So if we could just, really be clear, obviously private information, funder information, that doesn't need to be made public, right? We're not asking for everything, but for, in order for there to be, effective input from the public, if we could, add a requirement for that to be made public, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you. I'm just reviewing. Council, any thoughts in regards to the public?
I would, in response to you, Brian, thanks for your comments. This will come before council. Council, so it will be public that way. It will be on the agenda. I would imagine that when it comes before council, we're talking 2 years down the road, but or up to 2 years down the road. Yes, sure.
I just,
Whole community.
a feasibility study, obviously the whole thing might take 2 years down the road, right? But a feasibility study should contain a lot of data in it that wouldn't necessarily be made public as part of bringing it before council, right? And so the background information, the things that are going to make this more than just a presentation that we decide off of, but data that we can really dig into and determine how this decision was made. And my concern is that because the last feasibility report, I think that it was in total 12 pages. It had no actual concrete data in it. There was references to data that was not included in the report. And all indications is that this is being run completely differently and that this is being done on a much better level. But I would just request that we make sure that that's available in public.
So I might say that Aaron Anderson has joined us from Logos Works. So Mr. Brickerhoff's concern is that when the feasibility study is completed, that it would be, there would be public access to it. And I think you could probably address that.
Yeah,
Sorry, Sandy, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, so Aaron Anderson, Logos Works. So the whole purpose of this whole process, I think, is to be fully transparent. First of all, to allow council and anyone else who's appropriate, who's gonna take a look at this, and that would be the public. I mean, the work you all do is on behalf of us, right? So this will not be a good process with a project that is potentially has a potential benefit and there's some of the risks that some are suggesting if we don't do it transparently. So my intent would be to, I think all that information needs to be out there for everyone to see, up front and to be able to ask questions. I mean, I would envision, over a 2-year period, I would envision probably numerous check-ins with council, probably some public meetings, putting that out there. I think at the end of the day, if we can't do that, honestly, I'd say if me and my organization can't do that, we probably failed. And I would view that as a failure. So I know we won't be able to win everyone over on this,
Right.
but I think the best we can do is to be transparent.
Right. Does that help? Does that?
Well, if he's okay with it, let's put it in writing.
I think Councilwoman Washington has a suggestion.
I'm suggesting that possibly we place that language for the feasibility study to be made public, results to be made public after the third whereas. It will say, whereas the city understands that the next step in the development of this potential public safety network is a study to determine if such a network is feasible in the city of York, and if so, what type of network would be most effective and cost efficient, and the results will be made available to the public for view, or?
Any feedback from council?
Yes, so, Brian, right? Yes. I appreciate your involvement and comments on this. Maybe there's an opportunity that you can visit with Aaron and be part of this process. Because I really do appreciate your concerns and what you bring to the table, and I trust Aaron personally as well, that this could be a great thing for the community. However, your concerns should not be overlooked. And I think that just coming here once a month or whatever is not as good as maybe having direct conversations with the commissioner or Aaron and saying, I believe that this could work. Or I think that's important. Communication.
I'd love to, yes, definitely. We'll welcome it. Yeah, definitely. But I think it's also.
Come on, hold on one second. Is there any other public comment? If you want to, come on up.
Manuel Gomez, I wanted to say that if you can put the language into this resolution and make it explicit that just some sort of summary report is made available to the public at the point that you've reached either a completion of the feasibility study or you have enough where you can make this public so that we have something actionable for input. And I understand why Ryan would say that that's something we will want to have explicitly defined and explicitly stated. It's not a question of mistrust, it's more a question of appropriateness.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we have the change or addition regarding results to be made public, and also the collaboration piece. Is there a motion to approve the resolution with those changes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This item will appear on the March 7th, 2023 legislative agenda. And our last item for the general committee is an amendment from the treasurer's office. We have our treasurer here. Come on up.
All of you are aware of my concern already. I brought this up during the 2023 budget hearings back in the fall. And as we were having a lot of concerns with amendments and getting things passed, we decided to delay this to the first of the year. After the transfer of Maria Ramos to the mayor's office, Crystal Feldman to the wastewater treatment plant, and the termination of Sheila Grover and Beverly Wilson, who were both part-time in the treasurer's office, we were told that Wanda Ruffin's position of revenue supervisor was being cut. When Carol Brady announced her retirement last summer, Wanda Ruffin expressed interest in the position, and in September was offered the position of deputy treasurer, which she accepted. We were then asked to please retain Wanda in the position of revenue manager and liaison with the York Water Company until the end of the year, which we agreed to. However, when the new year arrived, we were not surprised. When the sale of the wastewater treatment plant to Pennsylvania American Water had not been finalized, and Wanda was pretty much forced to remain as the liaison until May, at which point she and I submitted a revised job description to HR, only to be told several weeks later that the position was being changed to that of a procurement officer. Yet no one has accepted responsibility for the amnesty payments or the past due sewer and refuge payments. It is simply impossible to operate the treasurer's office without sufficient staff. We're falling further and further behind schedule with numerous operational tasks. Prior to my election as treasurer, The tax collection office was staffed by part-time treasurer, 3 full-time staff members, plus more than $30,000 in the budget for part-time help. By streamlining the collection process and personally assuming more responsibility, we ran the office with 3 full-time staff and only occasional part-time help. By 2020, and the reorganization of the treasurer's office, the entire budget for part-time help with tax collection had been erased, and we began to address the $50,000 budget for part-time and temporary help in what was then the finance office and became the treasurer's office. In 2022, we've spent less than $7,000 on overtime for the current staff. I'm not really asking for an additional staff person. I'm just asking that we retain the position of the revenue supervisor in the office. We have retitled the position as a finance assistant. We have submitted a revised job description. It was included with you all to the information that I gave to Diana before the meeting. It outlines all the specific duties that we would assign to that person. So I hope that you will see this as an opportunity to really help stabilize our office and help us move forward. Recently, the administration announced hiring another staff accountant position. We're a little confused about this and what they're going to do with another staff position unless they're going to take away all of these responsibilities that should remain in the treasurer's office anyway, because they involve revenue, and it's the treasurer's office that all that revenue is supposed to be coming through. Those are my opening comments. Any questions?
I see that overtime was reduced by $40,000 a year. Can you talk a bit about that?
I asked the staff before we moved into the other position. They were used to having to come here and be here at 7:45 because the old hours of the treasurer office where we opened at 8 and we closed at 5. And then they were having to stay late because they had to close out their accounts for the day, do their reporting, count their bank, put everything away. So they were getting out of here, at 7 o'clock in the evening. And they literally said to me, we'd just like to get home in a decent hour so we could fix dinner and, enjoy our families and everything. So we changed the hours of the treasurer's office to open at 9 in the morning and close at 4 in the afternoon. That gives us time in the morning. We need to have staff meetings for them to open up, to count their banks and be sure they're ready to open at 9. And at the end of the day, it gives them a chance to close out all their accounts, be sure they check, submitted paperwork to Wanda or myself, and be ready to open the next day. And that's really worked out very well. We've had like 0 complaints in the last year about limiting those hours to 9 till 4. The county already closes at 4:30 and opens at 9. So it seems to work out very well for everyone concerned.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Any questions or comments from the public?
Thank you very much.
May I comment?
Yes.
All right. To start kind of from the end of Treasurer Jeffcoat's comments is that the full intent of adding an additional staff accountant to the finance office for the 2023 budget was twofold. Was to add additional staff for the plan for a procurement officer and for us to focus on procurement policies and such, and also to take back the refuse and sewer payment work that Wanda Ruffin, as the deputy treasurer, was originally doing as the revenue supervisor in finance, and then had graciously from the treasurer's office continued the work up to date while we worked to organize finance to take it back take it back over. Keeping in mind, originally that was work that was done when we did billing in-house for sewer and refuse, and then we moved both of them over to York Water, and then of course now we don't have to worry about sewer new payments going out, but of course there's still people who still owe us money, and remnants of the amnesty program we did a couple years ago when there were about 500 individuals that had signed up for what we call Plan C, which was the 10-year kind of payment program. So we have a lot of work to follow up on that, and then there is daily, weekly, monthly request for mortgage settlements, where how much money does this is owed to the city for refuse and past sewer. So there has been a significant amount of work that Wanda has been continuing, which I think the problem that's here and the job responsibilities that are part of the position that's being requested are the same responsibilities of the deputy treasurer. Just missing the supervisory part of the deputy treasurer's job description. So we have already taken the steps in order and have it set up as to who in finance is taking over this work from Wanda. And we fully intend to take that over from Wanda as soon as possible so that she can do the work of the deputy treasurer and help Treasurer Jeffcoat in what he needs done in his office. So that's the plan, that's what's in place. I had a meeting with finance this afternoon. And Assistant Business Administrator Dan Hevner has been tasked to make a meeting with Wanda so that we can figure out exactly what she's doing so that we know how we're going to be to take it over. And so that's where we're at with that. I disagree with Treasurer Jeffcoat in terms of whose responsibility it is in terms of this work that the revenue supervisor used to do. I fully agree that all payments, all money coming into the city should go through the treasurer's office, but the calculation and the determination of what money is owed to the city should not be done in the treasurer's office. That should be done in the departments within the city that is essentially billing out to the customers as there might be. We have the same thing in terms of the police department bills out for contracts they have for overtime, contractual overtime. We have the health bureau bills out to the state for reimbursement. So in each department, there's an aspect where there's some kind of accounts receivable involved. And in my opinion, this is accounts receivable, and it should not be in the treasurer's office since they are receiving the payment. It should be determined outside of the treasurer's office, set up in the system that payment is expected, and then when the money comes into the treasurer's office, they can connect it to the invoice in the system, and it's applied to our finances. So that's my take on the situation. In general, like I said, when the responsibilities for revenue collection moved from the finance office to the treasurer's office, the 3 clerk, 2 cashiers moved over to officially to the treasurer's office. The revenue supervisor did not. It stayed in the budget with finance. And then what happened was, as Treasurer Jeffcoat said, at the end of the year when Carol Brady retired and Wanda transferred into the deputy treasurer role, we did not budget for the next year to continue in the revenue supervisor position. So at that point, it was never in the treasurer's office. It was never moved over the treasurer's office. But I completely agree that Wanda, who was then in the treasurer's office, was doing the work. So we are making the steps in order to take that work away from her so that she can help Treasurer Jeffcoat in everything that they need done, which is why I disagree with adding to the budget and this amendment. I also have concerns just budget-wise with it because there's no note of essentially the cost of a position also includes not just salary, but the employer portion of FICA, Medicare and Social Security, and that's not taken into account here. And also essentially the revenue source. How are we paying for this? Because just adding the expense without having an associated revenue will unbalance our budget in the general fund. So that's my spiel for it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I do. So you had mentioned, Mrs. Robertson, that you had disagreed with Treasurer Jeffcoat with regards to how you bill out. Can you respond to that?
I agree with Kim. It's not the treasurer's office that sends out the bills, creates the invoices. That's not the job of the treasurer's office. That's the job of all the different departments, because they're the ones that know what services they're providing and what expenses they're incurring. However, once the bill goes out, I'll tell you whose phone rings. Our phone rings. And Wanda said, I asked her today before the meeting, gave her regrets from not being able to stay, but she says, well, I'm spending more than half my time. And I realized that she does, answering questions, not only about everything going on with all the delinquent payments that are coming in, all the amnesty payments, talking to York Water Company. I understand that because I spend half of my day talking on the phone, answering emails, answering mail that we get a lot of mail that comes in. It's really very, very time consuming. So what I'm really saying is we need somebody to be able to follow through on all the recording projects that we have. You all well know that we haven't had an audit since 2018. We're all working very hard on that. Kim's staff, my staff, anybody that has any kind of financial information. We're working on DCED reports that haven't been completed for the last several years. We're way behind on those. I know I'm behind on reports to the federal government that measure how we're bringing in income and how that income is breaking down. So they have all this data for federal grants. All the changes to all of our tax bills that occur on an ongoing basis. We have more changes than any other district in the entire county. First of all, we have more tax particles than anybody in the county. And we have more changes than anyone in the county. I've gotten over 900 tax bills returned to me. That's, 1 out of 14. And we've got to track every one of those down. Today I sent Kim a note for a check that got lost somewhere in the department. We finally got it. It came to us 182 days late, and we tried to move it through. It didn't go through. They stopped payment on the check because it hadn't come to our office quick enough and gotten deposited quick enough. Now we've got to spend time trying to get them to reissue that check, take that out of, Alice and I'll be going, we're taking this money back out of the control account because we really gave you this money, but we didn't have this money. The money that Kim's talking about, that keeping the money, the city's money straight, well, yes, we bring in city money, and we bring in school district money, and we bring in business improvement district money. A lot of money is now coming in through ACH transfers, especially from the federal government and the state government. And even the county has sort of moved to that. This is taking a lot of time that we never really had to deal with before. So just tracking it down, if you've ever seen an ACH transfer come through in the bank, it comes with basically no information except this came from the county. If the departments don't tell us what invoices they've sent out, I'm sending Kim a note and Petrell a note and Alessandra a note and the commissioner a note, going, is this yours? I have money here from the state. I don't know what to do with it. So it's not just a check comes in, you deposit, you put it in the bank, and you're good to go. We've had huge transitions the last few years. I'm on my 3rd tax collection software. We've added a new budget system. We've added a new financial management system. So I just think all of these things together just become a little overwhelming sometimes. And if we had someone we could transfer some of these ongoing duties and responsibilities to, I think things would flow a lot smoother, not only for the department, but for all the other departments in the city as well.
Since I asked the question, I'm going to do a follow-up, Treasurer Jeffco, and I appreciate the work you do, and you have a passion for the work you do, and I truly appreciate that as an elected official yourself. but we sit here and we're listening to what you're requesting, and then Kim, who also does great work as the interim business administrator, she's openly disagreeing with what you're recommending. Shouldn't you guys be having conversations before you get in front of council and present something to council that we're gonna more than likely approve if you're working together and having conversations?
Well, we have talked about this.
But
I
she's
mean,
openly disagreeing with what you're requesting.
There's a distinct disagreement, and I can't get rid of that. You know, I wish Kim would come to the office, but I know she's got 4 million things to do as well. I don't have time to go, sit in her office, and she surely doesn't have time to come sit in mine. So I think there's just a lot of work to do. There's a lot of record.
Well, we understand that, but I feel that if she backed your request, then I would be more inclined to say yes, but she's openly disagreeing with your request, and I think that those disagreements should be had before they come in front of us.
I understand that. We've had this discussion. We disagree on this point.
I just have to just say that according to the third-class city code, that the elected officials are able to hire positions, and, they don't necessarily need the approval of the administration to do that. They're allowed to create positions within their office. It just has to be approved through budget transfer, and that's where council comes in.
Okay.
It also says in the law that you can't remove emoluments from the office once they're set at the beginning of the term. I've given up a lot of those emoluments, meaning things that help you do your job in your office. That's very clear in state law. And we've cut a lot out of the budget already. I mean, Kim says, how do we pay for it? That is a problem. But we have cut $90,000 out of our budget, and we've also increased our income from tax certifications, refuge and welfare liens, transaction histories, duplicate copies of bills and receipts. So we are working on that side as well to increase the revenue so we can offer the services that we need to offer.
So Dee, since we're hearing from the administration that they don't agree with his request, what are the chances, and we can't speak for the mayor, that the mayor could possibly or potentially veto this? Or is...
I mean, he could possibly veto any legislation that council approves. So, I mean, you would just have to deal with that how you choose to deal with it.
Okay. There are also questions on whether the mayor has any say whatsoever. When I've talked to this, because we're supposed to be independent of the administration. Allison and I and the mayor are 3 independent parts of the city's government. According to my conversations with the state, and you can call DCED as well, which oversees tax collection, the mayor doesn't have any say in what you decide as far as our salaries, our compensation, or the emoluments that are included in our office.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? At this point, the conversation has occurred for quite some time from the treasurer's office for some type of additional assistance. I do hear the explanation in regards to the accounting position that has been posted. I'm not opposed to the additional help in the treasurer's office, and I even think when we were discussing the increase in salary, I mentioned other municipalities and the support outside of the actual elected office. So we'll go ahead and take a motion on this. Is there a motion for this to appear on the March 7th legislative agenda?
I make a motion.
I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? This will appear on the March 7th legislative agenda as a bill introduction, and then I believe the second meeting in March, March 21st. Okay. All right, that ends the committee of the general. Those are all the items for our general committee. So we will go back to the top of our agenda to Economic and Community Development, and I will turn that over to Vice President Washington.
Thank you, President Walker. Before us, we have a resolution approving the 2022 CAPER, which is our Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. I don't know if anyone on council has any questions. I see Mr. Crosby here.
Of course, I don't have any questions.
Do you have any comments, Mr. Crosby?
James Crosby, Bureau of Housing Services. This is a report that we submit annually to HUD. Basically highlights the performance for the year, how our subrecipients have, how they have performed, expenditure levels, that sort of thing. The report's due at the end of March. It's currently on display. If you guys, I assume you all have copies of it. So if you take a look at it, and if you have any questions about any of our subrecipients, any of our in-house programs, feel free to give me a call and we can discuss it. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Crosby.
I did have a...
Does,
Not recognized you. I apologize. Welcome. It's great to see you.
does anyone on council have any questions?
Yes, I did see that a hearing was to occur today. How, did that occur?
Yes.
Or how'd it go? Oh, okay.
Public hearing occurred today at 1 o'clock. There were 2 people involved. Unfortunately, they were both from our staff. So we had no input from the public.
So for public input, this is open until March 14th.
No, March 30th. It has to be submitted to HUD by March 30th. So I'm not sure what the public comment period was.
I'm reading the efforts for reasonable notice. It says, public hearing held March 1st to obtain input
It's usually 15 days, so.
of the CAPER for public review beginning on February 28th. The advertisement stipulated that comments received through March 14th, 2023 would be considered.
Yes, March 14th then.
Okay. So public comments can be received until March 14th. And who does the public send comments to?
I think my name is listed in the public notice.
Okay. And then they can just email you?
Mm-hmm.
March 14th. So as Mr. Crosby said, there was no public input this afternoon at 1 p.m. So public, if you have any input, feel free to email Mr. Crosby at jcrosby@yorkcity.org.
And I'm sure, I think I'll have to check with Tammy. I think the CAPER is on the city website also.
It's definitely on there now because I posted a link to it, so it's on, at least we know that it can be accessed if they look at the committee agenda. You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Anyone from the public? Okay. I would like to move forward with placing this on the March 21st agenda. Does someone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This moves forward. This item will be placed on our March 21st, 2023 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Washington. We will move on to the Business Administration agenda, and I will turn that over to Councilwoman Buckingham.
Isn't there another one under DCED? There's another one that was added.
Oh, it was, the Bureau of Health, that's right. Yeah, we have that. The Bureau of Health one, it's not in your packet, but it was submitted to us. There should be a bill for $21,242, and
Hold on.
that was handed out there. It's an ordinance
Yes.
for the Bureau of Health. Everybody have that?
Yes. So we'll list that as number 2, correct?
Yes,
Under
ma'am.
Economic and Community Development.
Mhm.
And thank you, Councilwoman Buckingham, for noticing that. So we have before us an ordinance in respect to the Bureau of Health for fiscal year 2023 by appropriating revenue and expenditures for Family Health Council of Central Pennsylvania for the family health planning in the amount of $21,242. I see we have a representative from our Bureau of Health.
Hi, Monica Kruger, York City Bureau of Health. These are funds that need to be included in the 23 budget that were submitted to be in there, but were not put in there. So that's the purpose of this. So they were rollover funds that should have been. Sure. These are funds that need to be in the 2023 budget. They were to be rolled over, but were not. So these are funds that we're asking be put in the 2023 budget.
Thank you, Monica. Does anyone on council have any questions or comments regarding this? Anyone in the public? Thank you. I would like to move forward with placing this item on our March 7th, 2023 agenda. Do I have a motion?
So
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This moves forward. This item will be placed on our March 7th, 2023 agenda. Thank you. I think I'm done now.
For now.
All right, now we will move on to Business Administration.
So we first have an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023 city budget as follows. Police Department to fund salaries and overtime for the Violence Intervention Team and overtime for the Patrol Division of $400,000. Fire Department to fund apparatus purchases by appropriating revenue and expenditures in the amount of $500,000. Health Bureau to fund general fund expenses for program services by appropriating revenue in the amount of $30,000. And Economic and Community Development to fund the Community Ecosystem Initiative by appropriating revenue expenditures in the amount of $70,000. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
Hold on 1 second. Where are we at?
Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
Okay.
I would just like to add that this is, it equates to $1 million contribution from WellSpan. That the last several years they have contributed $1 million a year to us that we've used for various reasons within the police department, the fire, the Bureau of Health, and for the ecosystem coordinator. So this is this year's contribution. We've received it. And so these are just adjustments to the budget to account for the expenses that are paid with those contributions.
Thank you. So do I would recommend that this be moved to the March 7th agenda, legislative agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's 3-7. Okay, so the next item on the agenda relating to Yoko Fiber Project has been pulled from the agenda, is that correct?
Yes, you'll see it next month.
Okay, see that next month. So we have item number 4 on our agenda, which is a resolution. Risk Management is requesting a transfer of funds in the fiscal year 2023 city budget to pay for this year's liability insurance policies in the total of $51,380. Do we have any, ask for the comments first, I've already forgotten.
Business
can-
admin.
Yep, I can
can-
give details. First of all, I wanted to clarify that on the agenda, originally I'd requested that this is an ordinance, and now you'll see this as a resolution.
Right.
And I want to give clarification. Essentially, the way it goes when it works with the budget and changes to the budget is that if there are transfers requested, meaning you're just asking in the approved budget to move essentially budgeted funds from one bucket to another bucket. First of all, there is rules in our ordinance that says if there's 2 different combinations, I'm not going to quote it very well, but it's called the 5% rule. So if the amount of the transfer, I believe it results in less than 5% of the overall budget for that type of account, that line item, like other professional services, and then it also relates to 10% of that department's actual budget for the year. So if it's, 5%. So if there are less than 5% of that, essentially it never has to come to council. It can just be approved by the business administrator that it meets those 2 rules, and I work with finance to determine that, and then we do the budget transfer, and we communicate with the controller's office so that they know that adjustment has been made and this is why. If it doesn't meet those requirements, then, which this one does not, then we can present it to council as a resolution. So it's just a one-time, it doesn't have to sit, because it's still just the same funds that were approved in the budget, just again, moving it from one bucket to the other, which is what this example is. If we are changing the budget, as in we are adding new funds to it or taking funds away, then that's when you see it as an ordinance. Which is where it does have to be introduced and it has to be published and posted to the public and sit for a meeting to then be considered. So I just want to clarify that because I know it's kind of helpful, and this was a perfect example. So initially when I knew I had to make these changes, and I must have, I'm the reason why this agenda is so long, so there's a lot of items that I submitted, and I had incorrectly proposed it as an ordinance, but when I actually started looking at it, in this case, this is risk management is the budget department that handles the expenses associated with our insurance policies, health insurance, and also our liability commercial insurances. So what happens, we work with our broker for our general liability insurance policies, and our renewal period for them is the beginning of the year. So the timing with getting what our actual policy amounts are going to be after they go out to the market and get them, and the timing of our budget being approved kind of overlap. So this is just a case that they give us their best estimate in terms of what the market's doing, how much of an increase, unfortunately not usually decrease, to what we had budgeted previously, and then that's what we work with. So this is just an example that after the fact, and it has to do a lot with our general property insurance decreasing because we don't have the wastewater treatment plant to cover anymore. That policy for property insurance was less than what we expected, but the other policies that are here are larger. So I was able to essentially transfer what was budgeted for property insurance to cover the increase in commercial umbrella insurance and our 2 vehicle insurances and our public official insurance. So I'm just asking to move the buckets around so that when we go to pay the bills, we have budget to pay them.
So I would recommend that this be put on our March 7th agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So,
Really supposed to be.
what? Okay, so continuing under business administration, I think it's agenda item number 5, which involves the Yorktown Hotel parking. It's a resolution YTH. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, that's the Yorktown Hotel.
Oh, okay. I would have just said YH, okay. So, the,
It's just a grant, it's just authorizing a parking agreement.
it's just, yes, this is just authorizing a parking agreement between the city and the Yorktown Hotel, who is using, I think, 2 tiers of the garage.
Correct. Been working with Cottrell Barnes, the parking bureau manager. We've been working with Yorktown in order, essentially, as everybody knows, part of the renovation of the Yorktown is that they demolished their parking structure, which was not very pretty to start with. So it's much more pretty on that back end. But that also removed the parking services that are available to their guests. So it had been talked about for a long time, and now we're to the point to iron out the agreement for them to actually pay us to lease spots in the Market Street garage so that they can use it for their staff parking and also for their guest parking. So we are literally at the very end stages of, we sent them the last draft of the agreement earlier this week, and we're just waiting for them to come back. They are aware that in order for it to start and them officially have access into the garage and all the benefits that go along with it, that we need to get it before you because of the value of the contract. So I do not have a draft here just because we are kind of still in negotiation, but they are looking for 105 parking spaces. And we start with the monthly amount at the moment for anybody to rent a space for the month is $96. So obviously in this agreement, and depending on the length of it, which the last proposal was 5 years, there is a discount to what they pay. But that's the detail that we're just trying to iron out. So I'm just asking that this resolution be put on the next meeting agenda, and we anticipate having the actual agreement to be included with the agenda for that meeting.
Any additional questions or comments?
Oh, I just wanted to add that at this point, again, kind of dealing with the specifics, but it is at just under $100,000 the city would be receiving a year from the Yorktown for parking services.
And that's per year?
Yep.
Okay. So I would recommend that this be added to our March 7th agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Lou, you need to start, because you're on this committee, so.
Yes.
You're on this committee, so,
You need to vote.
yeah.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving right along here. Okay, so still under business administration, we have a resolution regarding the Teamsters local recognized bargaining unit for the city employees. This has to do with the collective bargaining agreement with Teamsters.
Correct. The current, the previous contract that was in place with our Teamsters Local 776 expired at the end of 2022, and we've been working since June, July of 22, and we went to a, when it comes to the non-police or fire unions, they don't have the option to go to arbitration if we can't agree, but they do have an option to go what's called fact-finding, which essentially is like a formal mediator. So we did elect, the union requested, and we went to that, and that actually gave us the recommendation from the fact-finder. The city was almost in full agreement of, slight tweaks. So after we officially denied the recommendations from the fact finder, because of course this is all through the state and we did present the union with kind of our best and final offer, which is included as some kind of documentation for you currently. And the union's membership did vote, I believe it was last Wednesday, and approve of our last offer. So we have a draft of the overall collective bargaining agreement that a first draft that was done, and the process is, of course, we then send it to the union. They, yeah, this all looks good, and they send it back. So I am requesting that this be placed on the March 21st agenda to give us just a little time to iron out the details so we can have the agenda ready, the agreement ready to attach to the agenda for that meeting. But good news, we're excited to have this, this contract done.
Are there any additional comments or questions?
No.
Then I recommend this be moved to our March 21st legislative agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we have before us an ordinance dealing with handicap parking ordinance amendment. Item number 7 on our agenda. Do we have any comments or questions from council? It's here. It has a lot of red.
It's in the extra packet.
And it has a lot of red.
Oh, it's in this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, there should be some red.
There's lots of red on it.
Oh, no, it's in there somewhere.
It has lots of red.
Yeah, I'll start it out. Essentially what it is again, Cottrell Parking Bureau Manager has been looking into this for the last couple years in terms of the city's ordinance on the process for citizens to request handicapped parking spaces outside their residence. This is the result of that research. It is 2 steps. We're requesting that the city's ordinance be amended in 2 ways. First of all is removing the fee that's currently associated with the application. It has been determined that actually requiring, and this actually came up in a legislative meeting under public comment recently, and I was like, we're almost there, is that that could be considered that we'd be discriminating against folks with disabilities because we're requiring them to pay something additional for this service that's related to their disability. So we want to clean that up. We want to remove it. There's obviously still going to be an application process, and they will have to have documentation related to their disability, but that is going to continue, but there will be no fee associated with it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, now this was a change to the state legislation in 2022, is that before you'd pay and you get the spot out front, but there was no way for us to enforce that only your vehicles could park there. So anybody could park there that had a placard that was visiting, you know, their aunt who was your neighbor or whatever. So the nice thing is that legislation changed so that it does give us the ability for the applicants to assign 2 vehicles to be able to park in that spot. So we want to add that as an option, and we have determined that what we'll be able to do is mark the information about the vehicles on the back of the sign in such a way that it can't be pulled off, so that police and parking enforcement will be able to check to make sure whoever's parked there is actually one of the 2 that is available to park at the spot, and then enforcement will be done if needed. So this does not change the free to anybody handicap parking spaces that we have in some areas. Those will just specifically be marked that they're free to everybody or not have any indication on the back. So we're just requesting that the ordinance be amended to make those 2 changes, which we think are a long time coming and is beneficial to the public. Just asked, did I miss anything, Cottrell? No. All right.
Kim, let me just ask you real quick. When, with the parking, will that be for new applicants or will people with existing parking?
Well, it is renewed yearly. Yeah, it's renewed yearly. So we haven't been collecting a fee for the last year or 2, just because we were concerned about this. So we want to update the ordinance for that. But if this goes into effect and it's changed, say effective the 21st of the meeting, then anybody who currently have an application that's approved in place, we would follow up with to get the information for the vehicles that they want assigned. And then going forward, anybody who applies will, that'll automatically be something that's asked.
So for people that currently have it, suppose where, you know, they've already had it just approved, let's say last month, will they still be able to have their vehicle added?
Yes, Parking Bureau will follow up with all those individuals and get the details about the vehicle that they want to be assigned to the spot, and we will update the sign accordingly.
Oh, people are going to love this.
They are going to love it. Yep. But that's a big job for you, following up.
Good luck with that, man.
You might be seeing us requesting a new position in parking. Maybe.
So I recommend that the amendment of the parking ordinance be placed on the March 7th agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're getting down there, folks.
Oh, you got to vote.
And let's see, we have one more. Item number 8 on the agenda. Our final one is a budget amendment for the Human Relations Commission diversity, relating to the Human Relations Commission diversity dinner, which is moving funds from, I think, last year's budget to this year's budget for $1,500.
Close, yes.
I think I thought we talked about this earlier.
We did. At the very end of last year.
In December.
In December,
Yes.
they needed $1,500 to do a down payment on the venue, which is actually Keystone Kid Space. So we needed to amend the 22 budget to put the money in. And at that point, they hadn't collected any revenue because they do, charge for tickets to this. But this is a project that's under our Fund 26 for special projects. So what's nice about that is that obviously they'd been doing this dinner for years and years and years. We had a time that we couldn't do it, and now they're back at it. So they do have a fund balance specifically for that project, where essentially they had collected revenue in previous years and didn't spend it. So we keep that credited to them. So we used that last year when there was no revenue associated with the expense, and we've subtracted that out. And now this year, going into the budget, again, it was kind of end of last year that they knew they were doing this. So we went ahead and approved their budget with $5,000 worth of public-private contributions that they would be getting for the dinner, but we didn't have the expenses in yet. So now they know what the expenses are going to be, so we're asking that the budget be amended to pull from that fund balance again, minus I believe they've already received at least the $5,000, so that they have accounts to pull from to pay for the invoices associated with the dinner that I believe is the 28th, the very last week in March.
Yep. So I recommend that this budget amendment be placed on the March 7th agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And that wraps up our business administration business.
Thank you. We're done with this packet, huh?
Done with that packet.
All right, moving on to our police committee. Turn that back over to Vice President Washington.
Thank you, President Walker. We have on there, number 9 says a bill 2023 budget amendment police training, but we don't have any information.
Yeah, I obviously there was a lot I prepared for this meeting. I do not have that bill available to you, and I understand if you don't want to move forward with it. But essentially, what it is that this year is the first big year for the police department where they had multiple funding sources for positions, specifically police officers, between the money we get for school resource officer and hospital resource officer. We have a COPS grant, and then the ARPA funding. We wanted to make sure this year that we were tying the expenses associated with the individuals in those roles to those budgets specifically. So, in all that being said, I didn't want all of the costs associated with training, which for the most part is the academy for the new officers, to be budgeted in our just general fund 000 cost center. So, in the push to finish the budget, at the end, I removed about $43,000 of the expense that was budgeted the year before in the line item for the general fund 000 with the intent that I was going to add it to the other the other funding sources for these individuals, and unfortunately, I did not do that. So this budget amendment is going to be to add those funds that are needed. So unfortunately, I can't even say, oh, I didn't move it over to ARPA, so just pay for it out of the line item. I reduced the line item, but I didn't increase the line items for the other departments. So that is the gist of what the request is, so that the funding is available, so that we can say that these officers, the majority of which are the ARPA individuals, that there is budget out of ARPA to pay for the training for those officers. So that is the request. I understand if you don't want to move forward, because unfortunately I ran out of time to provide it to you. Otherwise, I can provide it to Diana tomorrow so that it can be included in the agenda on the 7th or for the 21st.
Does anyone have any questions?
No questions or comments, but I probably would recommend it appear, where are we at, police, on the 21st, just because I feel like we're going in the direction of getting last minute information.
Anyone else on council have any comments or questions?
I would agree with putting it on the 21st.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone from the public have any comments or questions? Okay. I'd like to move forward with placing this bill for the 2023 budget amendment for police training on our March 21st, 2023 council agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Never asked if anybody was opposed.
Moving along, we have a resolution. It says item 10. The program is about change GBI support. It states that the York City Police Department desires to enter into an agreement with the program. It's about change to serve as a support and outreach for the City of York group violence intervention to reduce gun violence in the City of York. And specifically, the York City Police Department desires to allocate $225,470 of budgeted ARPA funds to the program for administrative and support and outreach activities as part of the City of York's Group Violence Intervention GVI program. I see we have Commissioner Muldrow here, and we have Alice Ann Frost, CEO of the program It's About Change. I don't know if any of you want to come up and share any comments.
Just one moment, before we get to that, during our meeting earlier today, does it still stand in that direction, or with the sub review?
We have shared these agreements with Answer Advisory, who is our ARPA consultants, and they have them and they're reviewing them in terms of if there's anything, because we've had very few instances of needing official subrecipient agreements in terms of the funds that we have budgeted for ARPA. So we want to make sure that we have everything in there that we need to keep ourselves safe, and in terms of reporting requirements and such. So we discussed with them that they've reviewed them, and they're going to get back to us with any suggestions that they have to add to it. In terms of the actual ARPA funds have already been budgeted for these programs, so they're there. It's just making sure that the agreement is exactly what we need for our subrecipients per answer. So what I did say in there, and they agreed would be no problem, is that at the very least, if we want to make sure that the agreement is completely checked off with answer, that we wait till the March 21st meeting. And it's a resolution, so it can be presented and approved at that meeting, just to make sure the agreement, and same for the next line item, which is a separate program within ARPA, but it's also an agreement with the program It's About Change through the police department.
So these funds were part of the 2.4 plus million that we already have budgeted with police.
Correct. It's in the 2023 budget. Yep.
And I believe there was a question too about the conflict of interest on this.
That's the other thing that they're going to do, because this is a unique situation that Alice Ann Frost is also the controller, and we have in the past done some inquiries with the Pennsylvania the group that says, yes, this is a conflict of interest or not. But what Answer suggested is that they have their own kind of checkoff sheet that we can use as part of, and actually something that the program would sign off saying that, if there is any conflicts, this is what they might be, and that we review it and determine that it is or not. So that definitely will be something that will be added to the agreement.
And our legal would review that, I think, didn't they
Right.
indicate?
So they give us the sheet, you say, yes, there might be, this is the situation, no, there isn't, and then our legal reviews it and signs off of it, and that's just in there to protect us in terms of the spending of the ARPA funds.
Right, right. It's just a part of the ARPA.
Alice Ann Frost, York City Controller and Executive Director of the program It's About Change. I wanted to note, I think about 2 years ago, the program It's About Change, we received a CDBG allocation, and this came before council. And one of the things that council did do to acknowledge the potential conflict of interest is, number one, made an official public announcement at the council meeting. That was a recommendation from an attorney that the program hired, worked with Jason Sable, the solicitor, to make sure that that comment was made public. And then I also made a public comment that while the organization in itself is receiving funding, that is going for positions and into the organization, that there is no personal receipt of any money, and that I am an employee. The program It's About Change is a 501c3 nonprofit, and I am not an owner or, I'm not an owner of the organization, but just like any other nonprofit in York, an employee of the program It's About Change.
Oh, and the concerns are strictly to do with our compliance with the ARPA.
Oh, absolutely. But I wanted to make that as a public comment and to just, for those that weren't on council at the time, that was, it went through those legal channels to ensure that we were also in compliance with CDBG funding, which is federal funding that comes through HUD, that comes through the city of York as well.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from council?
I was just we can go ahead and discuss if you wanted to talk about the programs. Yeah.
I can't briefly, and it would actually, Michael Muldrow, again, Commissioner here at the York City Police Department, it would actually cover this and the next item. So just to kind of nutshell it all for everybody, we're departmentally really excited at what Alice Ann and her organization represents. This, in essence, will be our nonprofit community provider that is our organization that is connected to the community that will fundamentally carry a lot of the non-uniform, non-police officer initiatives that we're using to support our community to try to further our restorative justice goals and our alternative approaches to actually trying to improve and make this a safer community through non-enforcement efforts. So that's what this partnership absolutely represents, that what they bring to the table and their goals fundamentally underneath they align directly with what we're trying to do. And by the time this is all said and done with your approval, it will host numerous positions that we've created or I've come up with that help us get there, from the credible messengers to the trauma responders. And thing we're most excited about is this community principal initiative that's going to be coming out, the RJYE coordinator, that will directly focus on connecting with youth and families and supporting individuals, just like we did in the school district, through alternative means to truly take the expert in the field to work on behavior modification and supporting young people without handcuffs, without charges, and without having to lock them up in a more therapeutic and supportive way. So many of the initiatives that we're bringing to the table that some people may have thought were very outside of the box, that we later found that the state and the federal government were asking people to start to move towards anyway. And some of the things that have seemed novel in the beginning that we're starting to get funding for now through the state, because conceptually everybody's like falling in love with what we're attempting here, will actually be going through Allison and the program. And for me, it's just such a win with what she brings to the table and how she functions, just with her ability to dot I's and cross T's. So we're excited to have a person that's empathetic and compassionate like that. That's also somebody that's able to give us, flesh out some of the fine details of the things that we're doing, and then what she brings to the table with the strength and what their institution brings to the table with the strength with trying to actually get future grant monies. We're just excited, and we're excited because we think this is going to just keep giving and giving, and it's going to be good for the city of York. So,
Thank you.
Allison Frost, now Executive Director of the program It's About Change. The only one comment I wanted to add and just make note to council is, as far as GVI, the program did respond to an official RFP. So we submitted last year the RFP for the GVI project, and we were accepted as the official GVI support and outreach partner. We went through a rigorous process, screening, all of that, and it was approved through a general governance committee, which is comprised of York City elected officials, county elected officials that govern and oversee the GVI initiative as a whole. So I did want to note that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. I would like to make a recommendation that the resolution for the program It's About Change GVI support be placed on the March 21st, 2023 council agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion. Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Move forward. Next up, we have number 11 resolution for the program It's About Change for a trauma responder. I know Commissioner Muldrow did come up and share a bit about that, as well as Allison Frost. I don't know if there's anything further to add on that from the both of you. Does anyone on council have any comments or any questions for either of them?
No. Okay. No.
Okay.
oh, the only thing I will say is, I'm sorry. Just, and this is for everybody, actually, and for Manuel. The only thing I will say is this will actually be the second one. So the other one that we've worked on and developed was actually with the school district. So we will have one trauma responder through the school district that gives us the ability to focus on young people, and then another trauma responder through Allison and the program that will allow us to be able to have them focus on directly hitting the community and the neighborhoods and trying to support trauma victims. So we're trying to cover the adults, if you will. So we're trying to cover it from both angles. Okay. And that's in addition to, we still do actually have the counselor that we got, that partnership that was set up through Wellspan and the county. So this will be yet a third person that's working on peeling onions and supporting people the way they need to be through the trauma that they deal with and face. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? You sure? Okay. I would like to move forward with placing this resolution from the program It's About Change for the Trauma Responder on our March 21st, 2023 council agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? This moves forward. Our next resolution under police is York County Mobile Data Computer Service Agreement. Which is an agreement with the County of York. They desire to furnish mobile data computers to the York City Police Department. And whereas consideration for those furnishings from the MDC equipment, the City of York agrees to pay the service fee that is equivalent to $67,192.05 a year. Commissioner Marder, would you mind speaking to this? Thank you.
I can do this one really, really short. So the MDCs are the computers that are actually in our patrol cars. They've actually been in place since 1997, 98-ish, because they were on before we came on. And all that's happening right now is our 5-year window of the devices is up, and it's time to renew again. The cost has gone up just a little bit just because of, inflation. But the one thing that's different this time is that at the end of the 5-year term, we will actually own the devices. Whereas in the past, it was always just we spent all that money and then it was still county property at the end. So, and this will cover us for another 5 years then.
Thank you. Does anyone on council have any comments or questions for Commissioner Mardrow regarding this?
So you just said in times past, the county, after you paid money in the city, the county still owns it. So at this point, the city will own it?
Yes.
Is that what I heard?
At the end of this, at the end of this 5-year term, it would be city property.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone else on council have any comments or questions?
No.
Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions? Okay. For this resolution for the York County Mobile Data Computer Service Agreement, I'd like to move forward with placing this on the March 7th, 2023 agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Washington. We will move on to Public Works, which is led by Councilwoman Dennis.
All right. Good evening. So our first business will be, we have a ordinance amending the fiscal year 2022 city budget for the Public Works Department to pay the final invoices to Kinsley Construction for the King Street bike lanes work expenditures from PennDOT funding in the amount of $75,100.
Just comment, we worked with Chaz Green with this. Unfortunately, this is about the second or third time we've brought budget amendments to you for this. The good news is that this project is completely funded through PennDOT. We're just the middle person, so we need, if there's increased expenses that PennDOT approves for coverage, we need to increase our budget so that we can actually pay the contractor so that we then get reimbursed. Of note, though, it was discussed this week that what will be coming your way for any of the PennDOT projects for 2023 may be one amendment to give a determined cushion, because we all know the state of materials and supplies, and that's usually the big push for these increased costs. So what we're looking at for these projects, as opposed to budgeting directly for the exact amount that's originally budgeted, I asked Chaz Green to go back and come up with a logical kind of buffer percentage. So he's going to look back at projects like this and see what percentage over this project ultimately end up being from what was originally budgeted. And so what we're going to do then is, for this budget, the 23 budget, we're going to ask to increase the amount. Again, there's revenue associated because we get reimbursed from the state to give a buffer for expenses so that we're not coming back to you a couple times a year if the project gets extended. If the project doesn't get extended and there is an additional cost, then we won't use the budgeted expense that was there, and then we won't see the revenue coming in either. So we've been talking about that because it seems to be in the last couple years that this has been a habit with these projects, and we want to save everybody time. But I did stress the fact that I wanted a logical percentage as a buffer so that we're not just budgeting, let's put another, $500,000, and everybody was in agreement. So just to let you know that besides one amendment to get any of the projects for 23 updated for this year with that buffer, so we don't have to come back every time that there's an additional invoice that comes through, that hopefully this will be the last amendment of this sort that you're going to be seeing for a long time.
Any comments from council?
No.
None.
From the public? Alrighty. I'm going to recommend that, that this be put on the March 7th meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Just a reminder for council,
Yes.
your committee agenda, we have our members, you guys vote on that unless it's general, then we all vote on it.
Yep.
Alrighty. So that's been put on the March 7th. Next thing that we're going to move to is resolution CS Davison billing rates. Is there anyone that can speak on that?
Yes, we've got Dave Rudolph, who is the superintendent for building maintenance and electrical bureau, who is here on behalf of Chaz Green. And my son won't share his microphone, so Dave's going to get some exercise.
Okay.
Good evening, Dave Rudolph, Public Works Department.
Good evening.
So the amendment for CS Davidson is our engineer of record for projects throughout the city. So I believe that was to amend their rate. We never really had an agreement with them yearly. So with the new purchasing programs we're doing, everybody wanted to get an agreement with all the businesses we do business with throughout the year. That's what the agreement is throughout.
Okay.
Any other questions for that one?
No.
And just real quick, this one and the next one will look familiar because, again, with the changes we had, that it was the end of last year that we had 22 agreements in place for both of these vendors, so that we had them on record for the controller's office to approve the expenditures. So this is just updating it for 23.
Well, the next one I think is TRG. So I'll just before I
Yes,
leave, TRG is our traffic resource group. So CS Davidson does our engineering for building purposes, parks, roads, things like that. TRG, the traffic resource group, they do they do our engineering for our traffic signals and pedestrians, bike lanes, things like that. So two different companies, different aspects of transportation throughout the city.
Any comments from council? The public? All right, my recommendation is that we move this to the March 7th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
All right. Oh, okay. Everyone that agrees, please vote.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next thing is a resolution, and he just spoke on a transportation resource group, and we're looking at the rates for that. So we already did that. So public comment. Council. Public. Anybody? All right. Second. A motion to move.
I make a motion to.
Second. All righty. All in favor for?
Aye.
All right. All in favor for the March 7th meeting? And aye. All right. All right, next we have a resolution, which is general.
Mr. Rudolph, where's the heat? No, I'm just.
It's for the recreation.
I wore a sweatshirt in here tonight, and I'm thinking, geez.
Hotter and hotter. Comment?
Okay. So this resolution is for general recreation. They're our vendor for our parks equipment. So every year we try and do an upgrade to a park. This year it's for Williams Park. So we're doing a purchase through general recreation. They'll come in, supply us the equipment, give us the engineering specs to build that park, and then they'll even come in that day and help us lay it out completely and spruce up the parks for the city.
All right. Any comments from council? No. Public? All right. I'm tired, I'm sorry. I'm zoning out a little bit. Is there a motion?
Second.
All right. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
All right, that will appear on the March 7th meeting. Next, we have a,
No, that would be great. Can we do a consent agenda?
yeah,
March 7th.
all right. So we have Resolution Act 537, Plan Update.
Okay, yes, that's that was an error on there. I actually provided council with the correct thing. You should see a number 17 on your, and that is for an O&M agreement for,
You have it over there.
for Pershing, they call it Pershing Street. I've always known it as Pershing
Pershing
Avenue.
Avenue, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, it's like routine stuff on that.
One of the additional papers that was submitted to us. Did you have anything you wanted to say in regards to this? It's
Not
pretty
if you have any
standard.
questions. I mean, if you have questions on it, I can tell you what it actually is. It's our NIPD's permit for BMP stormwater discharge. BMP's, that's a Latisse Brown thing. It's best management practices for stormwater discharge. So they're just updating that permit.
Okay. Questions, council?
Oh, okay.
Public? Second, is there a motion to move to second?
moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that moves to the March 7th. And that is everything for Public Works.
Done, General.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dennis.
Thank you.
Our next committee agenda is under Rules and Administrative Code, this item. So I'm going to turn that over to Councilman Rivera.
So this is bill number 54, amending Article 145 of the Police Department. It's an ordinance of the City of York codified ordinances to remove the 100 police officers hiring cap, create a detective commander position, and update language as recommended by the Police Department to make the department more effective and efficient. Are there any questions?
We can have administration talk about this a bit, just an update in regards to your arbitration findings, et cetera.
Thank you. Completely unrelated. I'm so glad you guys are fanning because I thought it was just me.
No,
I
it's
thought I was
super
getting
hot.
sick or something. That's why I had to go take my jacket off. So, anyway, with respect to Article 145, oops, no, you're fine. Yeah, what we were looking to do in 145, and there's several pieces to it. First is in relation to the detective commander position. And by the way, he is actually with us today. We actually came with me this evening, Detective Commander Baez, in case anybody had any specific questions or wanted to hear from him at all. With respect to what the FOP had presented when they came to the meeting and the comments about asking and the attorney, the comments about waiting for the arbitration, wait for the ruling to come back, we won. So it has come to light that we were within our rights, or I was within my right to develop the position of detective commander. So we have that part. There is some continuing discussion where they're looking at other avenues to try to continue to fight it or fight him being in the position. But as our counsel has already stated, that's never been done before, and it's a bit of a reach. So we're confident that we're in a good place with respect to that. The other item in relation to 145 that's addressed in there is with respect to VIU, the Violence Intervention Unit, and line of authority. Whereas in the past, even before I got here, D1Cs had been allowed to perform in a supervisory capacity over the individuals that are assigned to that unit. It has somehow become a problem since I've come on, and we were looking to address that through the language in the ordinance itself, in that article, that would recognize that authority for those individuals that are in that role because of the special expertise that they bring to the table. So it would just give them the ability on paper to be able to supervise the individuals that they're working with on a daily basis, teaching, nurturing, and developing professionally. And then lastly, what's part of that is which is a larger conversation, or has been a larger conversation at times, which is the removal of that antiquated cap that was put in the ordinance many moons ago, like in the 60s, when the world was literally black and white, that said that York City was only going to need 100 officers to be able to police it, irregardless of the changes in times, the changes in climates, and what's going on, the circumstances of the day. So there's been a lot of discussion surrounding that, but for me, as of right now, and Kim can attest to this, we've been able to be creative with the funding and come up with other ways to get the support to be able to get there. You guys helped us get there with the support that we needed for officers, albeit temporarily. So that last piece with removal of the cap does have, to my knowledge, I know Jason Sable's not here anymore, but it has safeguards and checks and balances that nobody's looking to argue, that would say that ultimately it wouldn't change the process or the protocol of how we hire or how we bring on additional officers. So whereas if you all decided you didn't want to have a cap at all, or you wanted to make the cap 200 officers, it would still come down to what's budgeted in the general fund, and we'd only be able to have the number of officers that the city could financially support. It just takes away the fact that if the city continues to grow, or if the city continues to see troubled times and we need to have the department grow to be able to meet the demand, it would allow us to be able to do it without having the paperwork or the doctrine restrict that. So those are the three main points that are covered in 145.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything?
Come on.
Come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Andy Baez. I'm currently the acting detective commander for the York City Police Department. And I come here having had sat behind the camera at home listening for the past several months of this coming in front of you, and entities that are not present currently have given you some information. And there was a comment made by Mr. Rivera about it being personal. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm not going to go into that, because I'm not going to stand here and cry about it. I'm going to tell you who I am and why I am the best candidate for this position. I am born and raised here in the city of York, proudly a graduate of York High, William Penn Senior High School. I come with 23 years, almost 23 years of experience. I have 14 years of detective experience and a year of detective first class experience. In my tenure with the Detective Division, I've assisted, we've had 170 homicides from 2009 till present, to add 11 child deaths, so 181. And I've been actively involved in 154 of those homicides. Of those 154 that I've been actively assisted in, 41 are my homicides that I've taken to the Judicial Center and either in the process of waiting for trial, or I've had guilty verdicts in them. So again, I come with that experience already. Besides the fact that I'm an arson investigator, I've worked every single case from burglaries, frauds, robberies to SVU. I've been highly sought out throughout the county to assist because of my experience and the ability to speak Spanish in this community, something that we've missed for a long time. I've sat there and been there for almost 10 years as the only Spanish-speaking detective in all of York County. So again, I implore those that are not present to tell me how it is I am not qualified for this position, because I didn't take a test, because civil service deems a test is the best way to show that a person is capable. If I wanted to, I could have taken that test. I could have been that sergeant or lieutenant. That's not what I wanted. I chose, and when I came on, I wanted to be a detective. I made it. And I wanted to do the best job I could as a detective, and I did it. This man here, I didn't ask for this position. I didn't go to him. I didn't, hey, please make this a position. I didn't even think about it. I was willing and able to sit in the position I was in and do the best work I can for this community. The community I was raised in, walk these streets for multiple years, and still to this day, still walk these streets and bring my business to downtown York. And he saw something in the position and in me that made him think I can do this. I doubted myself. I doubted myself because I was told when the position came to me, you only got it because you're Hispanic. How's that supposed to make you feel as a man who doesn't use or doesn't wear that Latino on his shoulder, on his sleeve, to only justify who I am? Yes, God blessed me with being Latino. God blessed me with having that ability to speak a second language, but that's not who I am. Okay? So with that said, I moved forward and became the person that's standing in front of you, trying to tell you why I am the best person and why this position is better. A lieutenant being placed in that position does not come with the qualifications, does not come with the stamina that I've dealt with for the past 14 years. Missing time with my family, my friends, being out just to be alone, to do my own thing. I came and the duties that I took upon myself to do, I did for 14 years. No lieutenant's going to do that. No lieutenant's going to give you the drive, determination, the knowledge that I'm currently trying to bring to new detectives that are coming on. Okay, I am taking them under my wing. I am showing them the proper steps, the proper connections, the importance of connecting with this community. That's what I am teaching them, something that was lacked in the lieutenants that were there prior. I'm not here to fault them or say that they were bad people, far from it. But what I'm trying to tell you is, having this position, not having to be a lieutenant per se, or having to be a civil service position, is only something that, again, on paper looks good. Yeah, civil service, you take a test, you move up to the ranks. That what makes you the best person for that position. No, it doesn't. I've sat there 14 years with multiple different lieutenants, and we being the detectives or detective first class, are the ones that run the actual show. We're the ones that are out in the trenches trying to get the support and help for these community members and the families that we have to answer to. We did that. And that is what I bring to this position. Having made those contacts in the community, in the private and professional sectors, I've made those contacts. I get those phone calls, and I am able to connect with them because they know the face. A lieutenant was temporary. You put him in a year, he's gone the next year. You keep him 2 years, there's never a set time when that lieutenant's there. I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much of your time. I'm just trying to impassionately tell you why this is important. And I am not trying to go back to how it was or what was said. But yes, to answer your question, sir, it's nothing but personal. Nothing but personal, the attack that I've had to deal with for 17 months.
So what was the context of that when I said it? Because, and by the way, felicidades. You make us proud.
Thank you.
Estamos muy orgullosos de ti.
Thank you.
The context was that I believe when we were having the conversations with the union, that they were, the comment I made was that this was personal against the commissioner.
No, sir. No, sir.
So what was your context? What was the context?
My context, as I've been told directly from the very onset, The only reason why I got this position is twofold. Nepotism.
Wait,
No, not that you said.
No, the comment I said, you're saying that it wasn't, that it was personal, or wasn't personal.
No.
I'm just
that
curious.
when you were talking.
Just to jump in a bit.
Sorry.
Going back to October, at the beginning of October, when this was on as an agenda item,
Right?
FOP showed up.
Yes.
And when you made the comment, he was initially, well, I think we all thought it was more with the commissioner than anything.
Yes.
And so you're giving us a bit more. I don't know if we're supposed to be discussing a lot of this stuff, but.
And that's why I didn't want to make it that. I just threw that just to answer the question from back then, but moving forward and why I am here. To tell you the necessity, the need to us to look at this Act 145 and the need and the true reason why this position should be made. And it has nothing to do with Commander Baez. Okay? Because throughout this whole process, what you guys don't see, and I'm not going to go into it, it's always been the Baez position. They need to take the Baez position, the Baez name out of it, and make it the detective commander position, because it's not going to benefit only me. I can die tomorrow, hopefully not. I have 23 years, I'm 52 years old. I can leave tomorrow. I don't want to. I don't have no desire to. I still have a lot that I need to do and want to do. But again, I want this to show those that are under me have something to reach for. Currently, as a detective, the only way you can move out is one, take a test to become a sergeant, or have a recommendation or decision made by the commissioner to have you as a D1C. That's it. You don't go any further than that. If this goes through and is accepted, then we have something for these young detectives, male and female, have something to strive for at the very end of this. Okay? Not having to wait 21 and a half years that I've waited to take this position on. They can do it 9, 10, 11 when they feel confident in themselves, which they are. I can't take credit for the great work this Detective Division, Investigative Services Division is making. For the past 14 years, we've stayed above the national average of clearance rates for all of our homicides. Okay, yes, are there still some that are open? Of course. Is there some that we still have to answer to the families on a constant basis? Of course there is. I wish I had that answer to be able to add to calm them from what they continually have to feel. But what I can say is I have been able to calm families, and for the 22 that we had last year, which was through the roof, we have almost a 70% clearance rate. Okay, so that's why it's important to have someone who's in the position, who knows, can push these detectives. Although I have 4 in major crimes, 4 in SVU, I'm still short, but still, we do a lot with a little.
And thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
I would just like to add, and you don't have to leave, and I would just like to add, and from a leadership perspective, the part that's never been contested, the part that's never been argued by anybody that's come up in front of you at this podium, is the fact of putting the right people in the right place. If you're looking at a healthcare organization like WellSpan, Roxana Gapster is a medical professional. If you're looking at an educational institution like the York City School District, Andrea Berry is a teacher. If you have a detective bureau and you want it led in the right way, dealing with investigators, doing an investigative function, it only makes sense that the leader of that division is an investigator. So I understand why everybody wants to make the civil service process be the be-all to end-all taking that test, but it only makes sense that you have the right person in the right position. And I actually would say that when I developed the position, and then when I started looking at who would be the first one, it was a very simple metrics: who had the most investigative experience and who had the most leadership experience, professional leadership experience. He's more humble than I am, because what he didn't tell you, in addition to the over a decade of investigative experience, was how long he was a captain at the York County Prison before he came to the York City Police Department, leading an agency of that size. And that was how many years?
91 to 2000.
So combined between the investigative and professional leadership experience, there was no close number two for who would be the person to promote. It wasn't because he was my old partner. It wasn't because he was Spanish. It was because he was truly the most qualified individual for the position.
Indeed, and that's why I'm a little confused. So I would like to have that conversation with you guys because I think things got lost in translation since October, and I feel like he might feel some type of way without getting with me and asking me what my comments were.
Oh, yeah, no, I took it that he was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
But from his own perspective.
Oh, okay. I was like, what did I say wrong?
No.
I took sitting behind at home watching. Oh, sorry. What I saw, and when you addressed what you just heard, and the question came out, to me it sounds, I would go with that, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I'd be
What you
scared,
felt.
Detective Baez.
That's what I wanted you to, what you were saying was valid.
All right.
That's what I was trying to, I apologize.
I am going to move this forward.
But hold on one second. I just wanted to make a
I'm
comment
sorry,
real quick in regards to it.
Thank you for clarifying.
So this was back in October, and just so the public knows, council does not deal with this stuff. We didn't even know it was connected with you, or at least I didn't. I think most of council. The issue was we were blindsided by what happened that evening. So with that being the first time something's occurred since all of us have served on council, it was just like, oh, hold up, take a step back. Let's see what's actually going on. I think at our elected officials meeting in February, we were updated with the findings, and they ruled in favor of admin. So that satisfied concerns that were had on our end.
And again, I apologize for coming with the passion that I am, and I wasn't in no time trying to address city council in a negative way. Please don't. Having had to dealt with this for the past 17 months, I can go on, and I don't want that. Because like you said earlier, that's not what you were here to hear or deal with. It's just that whole process that I've had to deal with for the past 17 months, there is a backstory, okay? So that's why you're hearing me today. I stayed quiet, stayed shut, let the process go through, okay? Now that the process is done, per se, now it's time for me to show what this position is, who is in the current position. And so that you had just a little bit more what I was dealing with or seeing where I'm coming from, and the reason why I stand here in front of you is the real reason this position is needed.
Well, we're proud of you, and thank you for the work you do.
Appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
I would like to move this forward.
Hold on,
I'm sorry, you got a question?
I have a point of clarification. Commissioner Marder, you mentioned that, of course, we were discussing the removal of the 100 police officers, creating the detective commander, but you also mentioned the violence intervention. That's not included in here.
Okay, it was in our original submission. It should be a third piece that relates to line of authority for D1Cs, detective first class positions, and supervisory roles as part of that unit. I don't know if that got cut off or, well, Kim's not here now. You said it is or isn't?
I'm looking, it's in the mock-up.
Yeah.
For the assignment to rank is 145.07.
Is it A?
Yeah, assignments to the ranks, and it gets into the training, and, yeah, I read it today earlier.
No, on the last page.
Detective training, isn't that what you're talking about?
No. No, that's not what he's talking about.
There should be a piece in there that speaks to line of authority. Like that would be the actual quote. It would speak to the line of a.
To view it.
It's in 14507A.
07.
Second sentence. The detective commander shall receive the salary of lieutenant. Third sentence. The detective commander shall have no line of authority except for personnel assigned within their chain of command. That's the only thing I see.
Yeah, but he said something about a violence intervention unit. That's not mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
everyone sees, it should be in here too. Oh, okay. The correction would be the rank of detective first class is a working supervisory position.
What section are you under?
Yeah, so it's down, I'm sorry, it's down here.
E, D. No, D.
The new number would be D, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what should it say?
Made by the police
I mean, I
commissioner.
think it's actually worded incorrectly, that this recognizes the detective first class as a supervisory position, meaning people that are assigned to them, they're allowed to do their job. They're allowed to coach them, supervise them,
Oversee.
correct them, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So we're good?
We're good?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was just
thank you.
clarifying
Okay.
Because that was one of the things that was.
Okay.
Okay.
I want,
Whereas it was a standard that had always occurred before I got there that all of a sudden became a problem. Now I'm here.
You know, I just wanted to point out also that Vice President Washington had submitted a memo back on October 6, 2022, where she made recommended changes to 145.01.01. And in that, it was changed to read the police department shall be staffed at a number determined by council through funds provided within the current budget or by supplemental appropriations. It's attached in your packet, but it wasn't amended on here yet because it was still in committee. So if you all move that out of committee, then I will go ahead and make that change.
So I recommend, are you ready, Councilwoman President?
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
Anybody? I recommend that we move this to our March 7th legislative,
oh, we have public comment.
So, oh.
Manuel Gomez, City of York. First things first, certainly am in agreement with the memo moving forward and being amended to be incorporated into this language, most certainly. Of course, in September, we were almost up to vote, and I remember being the only one pointing out that distinct disparity with what we know it should be and what it almost became. Of course, some drama ensued afterwards. I really don't want to comment on that. With regards to 145.07, if we look at the Investigation Bureau, as it is to be established, focused on the assignments to rank. And I don't know if it's just me, I'm running on fumes, but it mentions in the initial 145.07, before you get to the lettered sections, it mentions positions, but then it also mentions assignments to rank. But if we look at the assignments to rank, detective, detective first class, those are addressed in E with the following language. The police commissioner or chief of police may return any detective first class or detective to his or her civil service rank at any time. We don't have a fair or reasonable or any stipulation for the detective commander assignment to rank that would be similar. Is this omission intentional? And if it is intentional, could we speak to this?
Meaning, can I get clarification on your question?
Sure. The detective commander is to be an assignment to rank, much like corporal, much like detective first class, as well as detective. Each of those assignments to rank are addressed, with the exception of corporal, which does have the language itself. But the detective and detective first class are, under the Investigation Bureau, addressed under E with that language. And said language says, the police commissioner or chief of police may return any detective first class or detective to his or her civil service rank at any time. We don't have such a clause for returning, say, the detective commandment from their assignment to rank of detective commander to their previous civil service rank. Is this intentional or was it a mere omission? If it's intentional, I would like that to be spoken to because the detective commander as constructed here is key and central to both the detective and detective first class assignments to rank. In essence, the detective commander could in perpetuity have a say or a hand on those assignments to rank. This may be intentional, but if it is, I would like that to be spoken to.
Gotcha. Now I understand the question. It is actually just a mere omission. Like it's in there, I see what you mean, because you're a policy writer person, so it's like seeing it somewhere and then not seeing it again. It's just an omission. Nobody, and this is because there's two parallel things that happen with respect to everything with the police department. There's ordinance and then there's the contract. So when it says about being returned to your civil service position, the only positions recognized in the contract are patrolman, sergeant, lieutenant, the civil service positions. The rank that they're talking about in the ordinance are things that people in somebody in my position can appoint somebody to. So I'm the commissioner or police chief is the only person that has the current authority or has ever had the authority to appoint people to either the position D1C or the position of corporal. If this happens and finishes going through, then the commissioner or chief will also have the ability to appoint somebody to detective commander. But nobody inside of that loop outside of my office can make any of those appointments. So it's not that the detective commander could put a D1C in place. It's not that the detective commander could put a detective in place. Contractually, I'm the only person that could do it. So that line could go on the detective commander position and it won't add it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to take anything away. It can be there or not be there. It just doesn't really mean anything because the only person that can make the appointments is me anyway. And if it's in there, it would just mean that underneath it all, if something bad were to happen with somebody in the detective commander position, that they could be put back to what they were in a recognized, like what they were originally from a civil service perspective. So case in point, it would matter more in a position like with Hauer, because Hauer is currently a civil service sergeant. If he later, whether it's years from now or decades from now, if Sergeant Hauer gets promoted to detective commander, if something would happen and a future chief or commissioner would remove him, he would go back to sergeant. That's what that language is saying, but it doesn't add or take anything away, like whether that line's there or not. It is very benign. Yeah, it could definitely be added. It's not going to. I'm stepping down like nobody else might have any other questions on me. Let me wait.
I hope not, because I'm tired.
Say no, forever hold your peace, right? And again, I just would add, like we spoke before when we did the Wilmington ride, at the end of the day, all of this is under your purview. Like all of this are items that council has the absolute right to approve or deny, make the changes as you see fit. That was part of the reason for the smoke and mirrors at that meeting, because everybody acknowledges and knows this is all within your right. I happily recommend that we move this to March 7th legislative agenda. I got you laughing.
Second.
I'm being serious. I'm not being facetious. It was the happily got me.
The recommendations that have been made. Should I read the recommendations, lady?
I'll get with you later. I got to get out of here.
Right. So, can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Any council comment?
Thank you all for being.
I don't see any, our business administrator left. Our next committee meeting is March 29th, 2023 in council chambers at 6 p.m. Committee agenda items are due by 12 noon on March 22nd. Thank you all who stayed till the end. This meeting is adjourned.